Hey there, welcome to this episode of the Skift Meetings podcast, the podcast for curious professionals embracing the future of business events. My name is Miguel Neves, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Skift Meetings. In this episode titled Incentives, Trends, and Personal Missions, I have the pleasure of speaking with my friend Annette Gregg, the CEO of SITE, the Society for Incentive Travel Excellence. In our candid conversation, we cover things like the SITE Global Conference as an example of where participants are going to experience a once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, the types of experiences that will get people out of their homes. We talk about how to address the imbalance in female leadership across the meetings industry. We talk about the importance of having a personal mission that goes beyond how we define ourselves through work. We talk about the research results from the latest Incentive Research Foundation's Trends Report in partnership with FICP. And we talk about how to nurture the next generation working in incentive travel. Hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and I invite you to check out the other episodes of the podcast. You can find these on our website or by subscribing through your favorite podcast service. And now for a word from our sponsors, PHL Life Sciences, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Host your convention or trade show in Philadelphia, one of America's leading life sciences hubs. PHL Life Sciences, the first and only CVB division of its kind, will connect you to the professionals at the forefront of your industry and to a culture you can only find in Philadelphia. A city known for its rich history that's forging a bright future, Philadelphia challenges the expected and defies convention. A world of discovery is waiting. Visit phllife.com to learn more. So, Annette Gregg, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today. It's really a pleasure to be talking to you again.
Thank you, Miguel. So great to see you and so nice to catch up with you today.
Absolutely. We've known each other for a little while. We were on the MPI board together, and then you also became MPI staff during that period. But wanted to start with a little introduction about who you are, how you kind of got involved in this crazy events and meetings industry, and if you could take us through. You have such a varied career. I don't know where you want to start, but just wanted to kind of get a little bit of an idea of that for everybody listening.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's always an interesting question, right? Because I have had a lot of roles in the industry, but I'd say since 1997 or so, I've been exclusively in this industry, maybe even a little earlier than that. And I just fell into it like most of us of our age, where a friend was selling exhibits for a very large association, very large trade show. And I didn't know what that even meant, but it meant a trip to Chicago. So I said, hey, I'm in. And, I think I really enjoyed all the variety of jobs I've had. And I think I would recommend that to anyone. So I've worked, on the planner side or on the buyer side for corporations and associations and agencies. And then on the supplier side, I worked for convention centers and a couple destination management organizations or DMOs and even a DMC. So it's really been just an exciting career path just to explore all those different seats you can have in our wonderful events ecosystem. In fact, I have a 23-year-old son. So I've been married 25 years, lovely, wonderful husband here in San Diego. And then we have a 23-year-old son, his birthday's today. And he's working in our industry too. And I think it's just great to see that next generation get excited about live events. And that's where he wants to be. So he's doing some work with an agency in Los Angeles.
Great. Well, happy birthday to him. And what advice are you giving him, kind of the bigger picture of the industry when you speak to him?
Yeah, it's a good question because I end up talking to a lot of young adults about career pathing. I've taught for universities for years, and I just really feel a heart for that young adult. And it's a confusing pathway sometimes. I think we have a lot of emerging professionals that are very focused on one part of our events world, which is I want to be a wedding planner, or I want to I want to work on Coachella. I want to produce festivals. I mean, they get really focused on something they just enjoy. And I think that's wonderful to have a path that you've clarified for yourself. But my advice to Evan and my son and anybody else is just really to try a lot of different things and keep your keep your mind open as you're really starting your career, because you just don't know what might resonate with you. There's so many exciting things. I never thought I'd like trade shows so much. For example, I really love a trade show floor and watching a trade show being set up and teared down. And if I hadn't said yes to that very first job in the industry, I don't know if I would still be in the industry today. So I think it's just to stay open-minded and to try some different things, even though your first or second job might not be your forever job and might not be that exact fit of what you're looking for in the business events world or even the social events world. Just, try it, because there is a common thread in our industry. No matter what seat you're in, you're doing a lot of that same kind of project management work. So even if you're taking a job now with a corporation, but you really wanted to be with a small agency, just try it, because again, those are transferable skills that'll continue to serve you in this industry.
Yep, totally agree. And so when you speak to people outside the industry, friends and family, how do you explain what you do?
Gosh, it's funny, isn't it? I think my husband's finally getting it, after 25 years. I think people understand events, but when they don't understand the power that an event has to bring people together, I think actually the pandemic has probably helped us, because the ability to be together was taken from us in such a powerful way that now people understand how, when we convene, when we bring people together, how that really can advance relationships and businesses and just kind of humanity, and how humanity needs that to be together. So I explain that I'm in what I consider the business events area, and then I'll give some examples. So depending on the audience I'm talking to, if it's an audience under 30, I'll say, like Comic-Con or even like a Coachella or something like that, just to draw some, so they understand, oh, okay, I get it. Or Dreamforce, something that they'd really resonate with. And of course, not every event I've planned in my career, and we've all planned our career, is exciting as a Comic-Con, but we're just trying to get people interested and just give them a mind picture first of the realm I'm in. Sometimes it's a marketing spin I might put on it, like I'm working for the marketing team, or might be on the incentive side, like I am now, working more for the sales side. So kind of depends on the audience.
Yeah, definitely have to read the room when you have that conversation.
It's true.
So you've now been in your new role, CEO of SITE. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
The Society for Incentive Travel Excellence, right? How is it going? I mean, tell us a little bit about the new role and about SITE, I think, for anybody who's not familiar with SITE.
Well, I was so honored to have this opportunity. SITE, I've been involved in SITE for probably 20 years. The Southern California chapter where I live here is very, very strong. And I've been attending events there on and off for a long, long time. So the nice thing, having come from another association where I was very, very involved for a long time there, it's nice to be with an association in our space. I mean, I could have been the leader for a totally different type of organization, but this really has a lot of crossover. I mean, really, incentive travel, incentive programs, they are another type of business event. They're rewarding top achievers in a company for their successes. And so, and in my past, one of my past roles, I planned incentive programs for a very large financial firm. So it's a language I speak already, which has been really wonderful. And SITE's got such a passionate history. It's 50 years old. We'll call it a niche or a smaller association. I don't think SITE's aspiration is ever to be one of the biggest, because we're very focused on quality of that kind of that incentive practitioner. So, but there are some folks there that, again, that have been around and been members. We have many members over that 20-year mark, and they're still involved, and they're still very active in kind of these alumni roles. We have a past president's council. We have a lot of chapter leaders that continue to re-up. So that's a real sign of health in the organization, when you have a lot of passionate volunteers and they continue to raise their hand. So I'm 2 months in, and I think it's an exciting time to be with SITE. So again, we're in our 50th anniversary this year. In about 3 weeks, we'll have our global conference in New York City, and tracking to be one of our largest ever, which is just wonderful. I think it's going to be really feel like a homecoming or a family reunion, having all these folks coming from all over the world. We have 15 different countries represented in our current registration list. So it's going to be really, really exciting time next month.
Can you share a little bit about the event? I mean, what are your highlights so far?
Sure. Well, we are fortunate to have a really good host committee with the New York and Company, NYC and Company, a DMO, and also PRA. And so they've gotten us into some really wonderful, iconic venues. So like the Apollo Theater and some of these kind of invite-only ballrooms around town. So I think that is going to be just very special for people to feel like they have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I think that's incentive travel and incentive program design in general. And I think not even just incentive programs, but all of us as we'll just call it, meeting designers and event designers, is just upping that ante of creating experiences that people can't get anywhere else. And I think that's just another reason that the pandemic has helped amplify and really accelerate our industry, is that people are not going to get out of their houses for just any old thing anymore. I mean, they do want to be together. We want to be with other people, but I think the expectations are higher that it better be something exciting, because it's not the easiest thing to travel right now. And some people are still just kind of getting their sea legs back as far as these events go. So it kind of makes us up our game, which is exciting for us. So next month's event is going to have a lot of surprise and delight moments that way, with authentic New York City infused throughout.
Mm-hmm. Love it. I think we'll be there in some form to cover that as well. So that should be fun.
Right.
Now, I think you're well aware that the female racial leadership in the industry is not quite as balanced as we'd like it to be. We're definitely a very female heavy industry, but on leadership levels, it doesn't tend to be so female driven. You're one of the few female CEOs as a major industry association. How do we address this? What can we do to change this? Or what are you doing to change it, I guess, in some ways?
Yeah. Well, I love that question. And thank you for bringing that up. And I do think it's an issue. When you look at an industry, we'll call it our business events industry, is I'd say anywhere from 60 to 80% women. And we just don't have enough women at that highest level, whether it's a DMO leader or an association leader. I think there are about 30 or so associations that belong to the Events Industry Council, and just a handful of us are women CEOs there. And I have been kind of aware and involved in this issue of, we'll call it, just kind of helping women rise and promoting more women leadership for a long time. It was about 15, maybe 12 to 15 years ago, I started a series of women's conferences just to help kind of women get over their own roadblocks. There are many external roadblocks as well, systemic roadblocks, but I think also maybe men have them too. But I know women suffer from some things that are self-inflicted, imposter syndrome or negative self-talk or just self-doubt. And so my goal in starting some of these conferences was just to create a safe space for business women to come together and say, okay, let's get there. How do we get there together? How do we, in fact, they were called Rise Up. How do we help others rise up from that? And even though I don't do those conferences anymore, they got a little bit busy. My life got a little busy, but we still kind of have that spirit in the women that I call my trusted advisor circle. And I think we intentionally do find ways to help each other advance. And whether that is, I'll call it mentorship. I think mentorship is a little bit of an overused term, but I'll help any woman that reaches out to me. I have not turned down one to say, hey, let's have a quick talk and how can I help with your career? If you have a question or you want to try to get to that next level, but even further than mentorship is that term sponsorship. And that's really when you start opening doors for other women. And how can you be that person that brings her alongside and brings her into the meeting, or brings her into that introduction in that place that she wants that job, instead of just, here's a suggestion to you, what is that next level of really sponsoring that woman and really putting your reputation on the line with hers. And so I've done that as well. I think that's important. You have to be selective with that, because you have to make sure that she's in it and as much as you're in it, because there's a little bit of commitment there on both sides. But I think those are ways that I continue to try to help women rise up in our industry, because I think it is an issue. And why it matters is that two things come to mind. We need to have a visual example to all these other young women that are coming up into our industry, that, hey, this is attainable. I'm represented at the highest levels in this industry. And then secondly, just more diversity in general. Women organizations that are led by women are proven to have better financial results in many, many studies. And they just bring that diversity of thought and a different approach. So having more females at the top levels of leadership in any type of organization, let alone an industry that's largely female, is critical, in my opinion.
Thanks for that. And I think excellent advice there. Any practical advice you'd give any female listeners who are maybe struggling to make that next move? Is it just about reaching out, finding the right person to reach out, or is there anything else that they can do?
Yeah, I love this question so much. One of the most powerful books I read, called, I can't remember it right now, but it's about breaking the rules. And it was written by three women that came from the Wall Street, and highly male aggressive industry and competitive industry. And one of the nuggets I took away from that book was about, let's just call it office or workplace politics. And their approach was, you have to get in the game. A lot of times women can sit on the sidelines and say, oh gosh, office or corporate politics, it's so messy. My work should just speak for itself. I'm just going to sit over here and work my tail off, because that's what really matters. And then I'll get noticed in advance. And it's just not the case. I mean, the hardest working people in the company are not necessarily the ones that are going to continue to advance. You have to create relationships of influence. And so I really, when I do talk with women, I talk about, let's reframe that notion of office politics. If you don't like playing the political game because you just can't get your head around it, it feels dirty to you, just consider it a game of influence or an exercise of influence. Who at your organization or in your industry, wherever you want to go, who is a person of power and influence, and how can we create relationships that are going to help you achieve your goal? And then at the same time, how are you also being that same person of influence to someone else? So always that message of, however much you've been helped, help someone just as much. So we have this kind of virtuous circle that we can continue to help others rise up.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
I noticed that on your LinkedIn profile, you also have a sort of personal mission that sounds very kind of close to what we're talking about here, right? It says helping people live more authentic, inspired, and successful lives. And I think that applies across the board, right? Could you tell me how you got there and why you kind of sharing this personal mission?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up too. So I'll tell you a quick story. I was laid off, gosh, let me think about this, probably 15 years ago now. And I've had career changes, many career changes and layoffs and downsizing or what have you. But this one I just didn't see coming, and really just knocked me, my own confidence. And I was, again, in my mid 40s and had, or early 40s, had plenty of confidence in my trajectory. But this one just really knocked me sideways. And I started reading a great book Brene Brown. A lot of you all listeners probably listen to her or read her stuff. And this one was called Rising Strong that I read at that time. And it really helped me own who I am, and that the circumstances of my career are really our lives, whether it is something tragic that happens or something that you're not expecting, doesn't have to define us forever. It's a situation that happens to us, doesn't necessarily have to define who we are as humans. And once I got my head around that, I started thinking about the power of a business card. And when you're between work or looking for your new opportunity, you don't necessarily have a business card to give people. And I know business cards are kind of antiquated now with LinkedIn or whatever, but it is a symbol of, hey, I actually have a place where I am and I have purpose, professionally, and I'm handing you this. And when you're not at work, you don't have that. And I thought, I'm never going to let any situation take away my self-worth ever again. And so I made personal business cards. And I still have a few. I should make sure I reorder these. But I made personal business cards. I wanted to remind myself that I have purpose and I have a mission in my own life. Doesn't matter if I'm working or not, or it's really how I show up no matter what. And so this was a tagline I created for myself in my own personal business cards.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really powerful kind of drawing in and kind of looking inside and kind of figuring out who you are and separating yourself from the job that you do, which I think is quite important, particularly in difficult times, right? It's easy to sort of let your identity be driven by whatever job you're doing. So
it's so true. And fear is so powerful too. When something that you didn't see coming happens like that, you start doubting yourself and you have a lot of fear that pops up, and it really can kind of hijack your brain and all, again, I wasn't young when this happened to me and I knew what I had to offer, but if you weren't ready for it, you weren't braced for it, a lot of things can start happening to you mentally and emotionally. You just got to kind of take a minute to get back, I'll call it control, but at least identify it, at least say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Why am I feeling this? And is it logical? How can I feel a different way? So thank you. It's worked for me. And I've given that example to a lot of people. And when I teach a lot at San Diego State University, and I've had my students do that personal business card exercise often, probably 15 times. And it's hard for people. If I say, okay, what's your personal tagline? Not I'm Annette Gregg and I work for FICP. What if you introduce yourself some other way? I'm Annette Gregg and I help people live more authentic, inspired, and successful lives. Oh, what is that like? Tell me more about that. And it's really hard sometimes for people to kind of think about, boy, what do I stand for? But that's a powerful exercise, isn't it? If we can identify our own tagline and that's who we are no matter what, that gives you a lot more power and probably a lot more confidence as you go into your next job interview.
Absolutely. No, I really like that, the power of identifying your own tagline.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to go back a little bit to the work that you're doing in SITE. Obviously, this is kind of now your remit. And I know that SITE also has a research arm, right? The Incentive Research Foundation, right? And you do the index. Is it annually? Is it quarterly? How does that work? And what was the latest results?
Thank you. So we have in our foundation, we partner with the Incentive Research Foundation. So it's a separate foundation, and we partner with FICP, Finance and Insurance Conference Planner Professionals Association, because there's a lot of crossover there. FICP members do a lot of incentive programming, and so we do an annual incentive travel index, and it's optimistic. Looking forward to 2023. So I'm glad to present just a few nuggets.
Just to be clear, who do you survey? Yes.
So we survey all our members. So we have 2,500 members, and then we'll survey also, I think FICP has about 2,000. And then whoever the Incentive Research Foundation has access to. So it probably went out to about 10,000 folks. And we had a good response rate, about 35% response rate. Most of the respondents are incentive travel agencies. with the next one as suppliers. And then we have instead of travel, we'll call them practitioners, the ones that are inside corporations, and then even some of the end users. So some of the attendees and participants in the incentive travel. So it was a good cross, and it was global, but we did separate the data, US versus rest of world. And so the US is recovering a little stronger for next year. North American buyers say that next year, 67% of them say actually next year, which is now this year, they will get back to pre-pandemic levels as far as their programming. We're only 50% of the rest of the world are pacing that way. So we see that in a lot of your research too. At Skift, we're lagging a little bit in the rest of the world, and I think it's just going to be there's going to be those headwinds of still not only just the health concerns, but there's travel concerns, and there's also their conflict, and it's just a little more complicated landscape out there. And then finance, insurance, and also communications and technology, they are the leading sectors as far as, again, just this is focused on incentive programs and incentive travel. They're the ones leading the pack as far as recovery. And then the ones that are slowest to resume are direct selling, or NLM. And then the other
any insight into why? I mean, these are interesting, but it's like, why is financial kind of leading the way back strong, and then was it SLM kind of really lagging?
FLM, multi-level marketing, direct selling.
MLM. Yeah.
I think when you look at the MLM model, those are independent business owners, right? They're the ones that they create their own business around a brand, whether it's commission only. You keep what you eat, or you eat what you kill, sort of thing. So they during the pandemic, their businesses probably lagged a lot, and so I just think the MLM in general is finding their participants again. So I just know this from talking to the real estate sector. A lot of realtors, similar model. 80%, at least in the US, 80% of realtors went out of business after the pandemic, and again, these are just people that did it on their own. They have to create their own Annette Gregg Realty. So if you look at that model, I think it's just another pandemic aftershock that we're still feeling. It's going to pull back up, but as far as programming, those are the ones that are lagging. They're still having some incentive programs, but they're not recovering as much as these. If you go back to the corporate sector, the ones that traditionally rely on incentive programs as a reward and a driver for business results, finance and insurance has always been there. It's a large factor, at least that's what our data shows. And I also saw that when I worked in the finance sector. And then technology. I think it's interesting that, again, this data is about 4 months old. Now with technology, we see a lot of pending layoffs coming and hot off the press. So I think that might lag a little bit more than this data showed 4 months ago.
What was most surprising about the results of the index? Does anything kind of strike you as something you weren't expecting?
Well, it was when we get down some of the choices for locations and where they're planning to go. What was interesting to me is that I thought, because of the pandemic and how we all couldn't travel and really couldn't plan these exciting programs, that now that it's a little safer, I thought that the program designers would be looking at really unique spaces and really unique destinations all over the world, saying, okay, we're coming back with a bang. We're going to go to this brand new destination. But what the data is showing is that even though the incentive programs are back and planning is back, the planners are choosing some safe destinations still, at least for the near term, like 23 and 24. So the most sought after destinations for the next couple of years are still the US, Caribbean, Mexico, and Western Europe. And I thought they might be ready to explore some more unique Asian or even Middle East, EMEA, or African, and that's lagging way behind. So I think that is just still like, yes, we'll plan our programs again, but we're going to play it safe for a little bit until we know what's happening health-wise, conflict-wise, and everything else.
Yeah, I guess in the midst of uncertainty, it's nice to have a a destination chosen that's quite safe, right? That's kind of easy to work with,
Right,
rather than
right.
take a lot of risks.
Right. I think it's interesting. Your trends data that came out for Skift, it was your mega trends, which I think is such a wonderful publication. And they talked about the ultra luxury sector. And I think that is a take home for our membership and our constituency too, is that that ultra luxury sector is still very strong. And they are looking for what is that next level experience that you can craft for me, even though might still be going to a traditional destination or one of those safer ones. We still have an onus to create something they can't get anywhere else. And whether that is in, a luxury experience or just a super unique experience, that's what the participants still want. And for us too, I think it actually is really going to benefit those destinations that have a good cultural story to tell, because that's also what the end users and the, we'll just call them experienced designers, are looking for, is how can you bring up that authenticity in a destination? So say we're going to Hawaii again, but Hawaii has such a rich history, rich cultural, so many cultural offerings. That's what they want, is that authentic uniqueness that way. You don't necessarily have to take them out to the middle of nowhere, but create that experience while we are, in a more traditional destination.
That's kind of interesting. So what I'm hearing you say is that although planners are selecting the traditional destinations, be it Mexico, Cancun, or Hawaii, or something like that, the attendees are asking for more authentic experiences. So they'd like to actually experience the destination a bit deeper, not just the pool and the drinks and the catamaran trip or something like that. More kind of like, how do I get to know the culture and get to know the local culinary, etc.
Absolutely, and that is reinforced by the data too. So the data shows that also what these designers are looking for. They're looking for activities that promote relationship building over the shopping experiences and the even sustainability. So sustainability, and I'm going to touch on that in a second, that is the lowest ranked, but the ones that are highest ranked, the 1 and 2, activities that promote relationship building, obviously, because they haven't seen their colleagues in 3 years. This might be the first incentive trip back on the books. And then group cultural experiences. So they want to get immersed in what's the authenticity. And then third was luxury travel experiences. Now, sustainability, this was another aha for me. Sustainability, and so activities that promote practices around sustainability ranked really low in respondents and what these experienced designers are crafting, and also what the end users are looking for. But here's my thought on that, Miguel, is I think at this point, we want to think that sustainability and creating a meeting and incentive program with sustainable practices is a must-have and a given. And I think, again, research on the Skift side reinforced that it's not even something we should be asking as far as, do you prioritize this or not? Like we have to be doing this. We have to be being smart about the places we choose. We have to choose hotels and resorts that have a commitment to this. There are, the most of them are doing it, right? Especially in these places where I just think about Tulum. I was there not too long ago. That is just this beautiful natural jungle, and they're going to take care of that region. They don't want to lose that beautiful authenticity there. So those hotels that I'm familiar with down there have deep commitments to sustainability there. So it's my guess about why sustainability ranked so low. I don't think it's not a priority. I think that we want to hope that it's a given and a must-have in everything we do now.
I hope you're right, because we see the same thing, right? I also see sustainability in our surveys quite low. And I do think it's one of those things that's sort of embedded into everything. I wrote about it actually at the ICA Congress in November in Krakow in Poland. The main themes of the Congress were sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and legacy. And what was interesting was they didn't sort of have a legacy track or a sustainability track or a DEI track. It was just part of how everything was shaped. So it's that sort of idea of these things now are just things that we have to do and are good for us to do. And then we talk about, the business side of the topics, etc. But there's always an underlying kind of element of that. And I think that is healthy, but I don't know. I have my doubts whether people are choosing properties on sustainability causes. I do think that they are choosing. It's nice when they see that there's great sustainability, and if they really care, they can go in and actually see that the initiatives are really positive. But I'm not sure that that's a sort of prerequisite. I don't think that's the first thing on the RFP.
I'm fearful of the same thing, and I think we can't let our foot off the accelerator when it comes to that. It can't just be a check the box thing. How are we showing it, and really taking a minute to saying, okay, what are we doing at our own conference? What is our commitment? What are the 5 things that we're going to say we're doing? And it's a lot. I know, for being on the practitioner side in many of my roles, and being a planner, it feels like another thing I got to think about. And in the meantime, I've got all these attendee needs coming at me and everything else. It's just, we have to get to that point where it is as important as food and beverage and as important as the ballroom setup. I agree. We have to keep fighting that fight.
Absolutely. So I want to start wrapping up, but I wanted to kind of get from you some sort of big picture thinking. Challenges that the industry is facing. Is there anything that you're seeing that isn't obvious, that you're seeing that's coming up ahead, that you're thinking, actually, we should be paying attention to this because this might be a big issue coming up next?
Well, I don't know if it's not obvious, but I'm going to underscore it anyway. It just continues to kind of hit me in the face. Is about really recruiting that next generation of meeting event professionals. And if you look at the amount of baby boomers that are soon to retire, and most of our associations have an aging membership and an aging community. So I know at first sight, only 20% of our membership is under the age of 40. So what we have got to replenish, the pipeline. And so if you look at, I'll just stick with the association world. If you look at why people join, it's a different reason why people join if you're in your 20s than you're in your 40s, or than when I joined 20 years ago. Why do people join today? It's different. And if they join at all, and is membership the brass ring, or what else does success look like for an association? So I think for associations alone, we really have to look at that. What's going to lure that next generation? And then I also look at our industry and how it really took a hit. We all know this in the pandemic. A lot of people left it. It's hard work. It's rewarding work. Those of us that are long timers, we love this industry. I'm not going to say it hasn't been hard work. And so I'll take my son. If I'm looking at a 23-year-old and he wants to get into this industry, what's the positioning that we have to look at? And how are we talking about our industry? Even the word hospitality is misleading. It doesn't do our industry justice, I think, although I like serving people and I like being hospitable, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not as sexy maybe as some other careers. So when you're thinking about the type of work that we have to offer that next generation, which is super exciting work, exploring other nations and other cultures, and crafting these experiences that bring people together, that can really move businesses forward. And, we love our work. So we have to find ways to better explain it to that next generation and really recruit them beyond the, I want to plan the next Coachella. There's exciting work to be done on the business event side. So I think that's, for me, the biggest challenge that I'm going to be diving into with our team is that next generation and how are we positioning it. And then, everything else that's obvious is the financial situation and kind of the geopolitical things happening around the world. We are, as a small association, we're 2,500 people, but we have members in 90 countries. So we have a lot of different situations happening to all of our members and our chapters. And so what does that look like for site? How do we create stability in our own membership? And what does success look like? To have 5 people in a certain chapter somewhere, how are we spreading the word, or at least serving that community?
Absolutely. And so to kind of build on that, when you think of incentive travel, the area that you're specifically looking at, and you think of an incentive trip in the next 5-10 years, what's going to be different about an incentive trip in the kind of near or midterm future?
I think that's such an important question, Miguel. So back to the positioning statement, a lot of people are drawn to incentive travel because extremely creative, and the spend per participant. So our members that are crafting these incentive programs, they're spending anywhere from 6,000 to 8,500 US per person on these programs. So it's a lot more creative when you have bigger budgets. So incentive programs are very exciting, and because you really get to do things you couldn't do anywhere else. Having dinner on top of a glacier, and that's not an exaggeration. Those crazy stuff. So yes, that is a great lure for people to get people in our industry and continue to have eyes on these things. And at the same time, I think we have to look at the bigger reason that I get excited about incentive travel and incentive programming is that it really celebrates human achievement. When you think about getting these people in a room, these are the top achievers of their companies. And, how do we make them feel really great about that, that they've achieved the top of what they've been asked to do, and they're moving their companies forward. And that is that kind of spirit. That's what the world needs more of right now. And we're still with these hybrid work environments. We're still very fragmented. I read a stat, it might have been in Skift, can't remember, but that we're spending, it was in your research, Miguel, that we're spending less time than ever with even our closest friends. And that worries me for humanity. We need to be together, and we know that magic happens when we're face to face. So why I get excited about the future of our industry, not only incentive programs, but just business meetings and programming in general, is getting people together in a room is magic, and humanity needs it. And with incentive programs, we not only get to do that, but we also get to celebrate the best of the best. So I think that I want to continue to kind of encourage my side of the industry, that incentive professional, that they're doing great work on a grand scale, really celebrating humans and getting them together. So I think, to specifically answer your question, what will it look like going forward? Data shows, again, the younger achiever now. So we're aging out. You're getting 75 million of these millennials and Gen Ys coming in, and they are now becoming the top achievers. So what they look for is different than what that 50-year-old top achiever looked for in that incentive program. And they are looking for more authenticity, more unique, less constructed programming. So yes, they want to be with their peers, but don't tell me what to do every minute of the day with all these different activities. So a lot more of just, I'm going to pick my space and pick my path. So I think that's what you're going to see is, as the end user or the participant is younger, you're going to see more authentic destinations that are just a little bit off the beaten path, although maybe still going to Hawaii, but maybe a different part of that island, and a more culturally more cultural infusion throughout that program. Again, back to authenticity, and then not over programming every minute of that, of their time together.
I think that's a very interesting prediction, and I could see that in practice almost instantly. As you see the younger people coming through, I think I would definitely be attracted to something like that, right, compared to a cruise or a nice hotel or anything like that. So I appreciate that.
Sure. I want to talk about, just reminded me, there's a really great DMC. I think it's out of Barcelona, but they're called Authenticities. And this is another thing I think we're going to see in incentive programming is the ability to explore a destination based on your personal interest. So Authenticities will say, hey, are you interested in the education scene? Click here, and they'll pull up an itinerary that'll take you to, explore the local public schools and then a university or whatever. Are you interested in the arts scene? And then they'll take you to a 3-day itinerary in that city that they're 3 perfect days in Barcelona art or whatever. So, and they get into, even if you're interested in kind of the social impact or the environment, or so. I think you're also going to see that too, as that the demographic shifts for incentive programming is, how can we really get to know a city, not just on the grounds of this wonderful 5-star all-inclusive resort, but if you're going to take me out and I want to see what it's really like. And so just, again, back to culturally authentic programming.
And also, I think you mentioned there an element of personalization, right? So really kind of making a program that's perfectly suited to the individual where possible.
Absolutely.
Annette, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's been really interesting to covering your journey and sight and all the things that are interesting in the world of incentive travel. I would love to wrap up by asking for your recommendation for somebody else who we should have here on the podcast.
I think that's such a great question. So I am going to give you, I had a few ideas, but I'm going to give you Jason Dunn. So Jason Dunn is the new executive director of National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals. He was the chair for many years, but now he is the paid executive director. And Jason is one of those inspirational humans you just want to be around. He is an amazing man, and he also has just such a heart for having amplifying voices that need to be amplified. In a respectful way, but persistent and professional. And so he's one of my favorite humans, and I would recommend Jason Dunn to you, Miguel.
Perfect. I look forward to meeting Jason and having him on the podcast. I think that'll be a really good conversation. So thank you for that recommendation.
You're welcome. Well, thanks for having me today. So great catching up with you.
You're really welcome. Thank you for being on the show with us. I hope everybody listening enjoys the interview, and hope to see you back on the Event Manager podcast soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.